morning, and welcome to Driving Force Radio, where we seek to discover what drives today's leaders. Today we're talking with some of Denver and the surrounding cities' most influential leaders when it comes to economic development and recreational development. Specifically, we will be speaking to the folks that have planned the Glendale Riverwalk Plan and the Colorado Sports and Prehistoric Park to be developed along U.S. Highway 85. Here today as my co-host is Steve McMillan, Special Projects Editor and City Desk Team Leader at the Denver Post. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thanks, Jan. Good to be here.
You know, our first guest today is the Mayor of Glendale, Mike Dunafon. He's chaired the Planning Commission for the city for the past 10 years, is a representative to DRCOG, and sits on several boards, including the Cherry Creek Transportation Solutions, the Glendale YMCA, and the Greater Glendale Chamber of Commerce. We're also joined by Deputy City Manager Linda Cassaday. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Jen.
Linda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the Glendale Riverwalk Plan?
The Glendale Riverwalk Plan was contemplated 12 years ago in the strategic planning initiative by the citizens of Glendale. As you know, Glendale was an organic entertainment district. Those of us who've been here for a while remember the good old days of Glendale. Politically, that changed in the mid-90s. We're bringing back what was organically there through legislation, which enables us to have 24/7 entertainment district. We changed that law in the state, which is substantive for every other city in the state, that we call it Grow Up America. But at 60 years old, I should be able to walk down the street with a beer.
Linda, there are a lot of different organizations, or at least 6 that are involved, Estes Park, Pueblo, Montrose, that want the RTA funding for their projects. How are these cities chosen, or do they nominate themselves? And also, how is Glendale's Riverwalk Plan shaping up for the funding?
Thanks. Actually, the projects all had the ability to apply for this funding to the state. A project had to be a significant project, show that it was going to bring in significant tourism, be a large-scale regional project. So the RTA legislation was really designed as a partnership between local government and the state to bring in more tourism to the state and increase the state's revenues. So all of these projects have applied for this funding to the state. Each project truly believes that it is worthy of this funding, and part of the challenge is that the legislation limits the selection of those projects to only 2, instead of being able to select as many projects as can bring in more tourism, whether it's a big project like the Glendale Riverwalk Project, or the Gaylord Project, or the Douglas County Project, or the Estes Park Project. All of those have the ability, along with the Pueblo Riverwalk, to bring in additional tourism to the state. And in our minds, that's a great thing. And rather than competing with each other for these dollars, we really want the state to embrace that and say, let's bring in as much tourism as possible. Let's partner with local governments to do that.
Well, and Mr. Mayor and Linda, I know that, you know, we all know tourism is such a key thing here in our state of Colorado, and really one of those things that we're trying to develop. And Mr. Mayor, what could the development of the Riverwalk Project really mean for Glendale and its surrounding areas in terms of an economic impact?
Well, Jen, one of the interesting things about the RTA is the way it was crafted. It was narrowly crafted to really build a NASCAR track in Aurora some years ago. That failed. Part of the problem we faced in Glendale, especially with the Glendale project, is it was so narrowly crafted we couldn't get out of the box to tell our story. So we added a section to talk about what it means, to answer your question, tourism. 3 years ago we had the Churchill Cup. So in Glendale we had Russia and Argentina, Uruguay, 12 different teams over a 2-year period. 110 million households watched Glendale in the state of Colorado worldwide. Now, we think that is sort of a record. The reason is the number 2 sport in the world is rugby. The sleeping giant in the world of rugby is the United States. Part of what we contemplate here is to broadcast Glendale, Colorado, and the 5 tourist industries of Colorado to the number 1 sports demographic in the world, rugby. We already have, as you know, everything is content driven. Today, we're going out over broadband. If you have the content, you have the opportunity to deliver your message. Well, the RTA didn't allow us to deliver that message. We're getting it out through shows like this to say we can deliver the Glendale message to the world. We think it is a substantial change in the landscape for tourism in Colorado.
Well, and the Glendale message is so much more than the Glendale message. It really is sort of that beacon, that message for the state of Colorado and how welcoming it can be, how beautiful it can be. You know, Glendale is really surrounded as well by some of the most beautiful parts of our city and has some of the most beautiful parts of our city inside of your city limits. And, you know, it's certainly much bigger than that. It's the message of Colorado as well as the message of the city of Glendale.
We went out to the tourist industries. You might be surprised to find out that the dude ranch industry is a $108 million a year business. We asked them, where are your clients worldwide? Japan, England, and Germany. Japan has 2,600 rugby clubs. And we know what England thinks of it. Are you advertising there? No, in fact, we can't afford, even in print, to do that. Well, suppose we own the ad space and the productions that we do in rugby. Suppose you produce a commercial and we air it in England and Japan and Germany for you through the back door of the #2 sport in the world. Now that fundamentally changes tourism in the message we invite the world to come here. That's not just, there is no cannibalism of other projects across town.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Linda, we know that it appears that there's some friction between the projects or within it, the consultants, the EDCs, and the state. Give listeners a feel for some of that underlying uproar and its implications to the economic viability of the Riverwalk project in Glendale coming to fruition when only 2 can be chosen out of all of those.
Sure. That's, I think, the challenge of this RTA legislation is projects are now competing against each other for these dollars. Projects that are completely different and really not sharing, not cannibalizing each other, but each bringing its own type of tourism into the state. So you have the Gaylord project, which is a very big project that will bring tourism into the state by bringing these conventions in. Obviously, downtown Denver feels that that's going to be a bit of a competitive, that's going to give them a competitive disadvantage because it's going to be pulling some business from downtown Denver. For the Glendale Riverwalk project, that really doesn't compete with any other project. It really brings the entertainment component into that Metro Denver area, a 24/7 entertainment district that doesn't exist anywhere else. It builds on Cherry Creek, that is the #1 tourist destination in the state, and brings the people that are shopping in Cherry Creek over to play in Glendale. Have the entertainment component, a very interactive, video-centric, active place 24/7. So really exciting development that includes, as Mike said, this great broadcast component to it. But each project really has merits to it and can bring tourism into the state. And rather than competing against the projects, we'd really like to see the state embrace all of the projects and bring any additional revenues that it can into the state. The local governments are going out to the market and selling those projects. The market ultimately is going to be the one to decide whether a project is viable or not. Each project feels that it is, and for the state to give its assistance then to each project and create revenues that don't currently exist has to be a win for everybody.
You bet.
Mike, you've talked about rugby and now the Riverwalk as part of your economic development platform. Can you just talk about that broader economic development initiatives out there in Glendale?
Glendale took a unique approach some years ago to the idea of governance. Glendale cut its city staff in half, took its bond rating, thanks to people like Linda, from a double B minus to a double A minus. We have created growth and opportunity centers that could not be created by private enterprise. That, in our way, is our concept of what good governance is. It's not to do things for private industry they can do themselves. It's to supply the opportunity for private industry to thrive. Subsequently, we are exploding while some other cities are imploding. So we tried to create a nexus of things that would ask the world into Glendale. We speak 13 languages in Glendale. 117 nations play rugby. We have a fairly low socioeconomic demographic, so we needed to pick a sport that doesn't cost any money to play. Hockey's very expensive. Lacrosse is expensive. And we could go out to the world with this message. Nobody had done it before. We'll have a Hall of Fame. Well, Canton, Cooperstown, Springfield, all great Hall of Fame towns. So we're trying to think outside the box, think big, and expand opportunities for our citizens and for the state, if not the United States.
Linda, has the competition with Gaylord and the issues that have developed between Aurora and downtown Denver, has that hurt the concept of regionalism when it comes to economic development?
You know, it really shouldn't. I think the challenge is that any additional money you can bring into the state is a good thing. It truly is. And there shouldn't be this competition between areas. I think that our economist, Tucker Hart-Adams, really said it right when she said the state needs to embrace all of these. Any amount of economic development is great. When you see the numbers that the Gaylord can bring in, that's a great thing. When you see the $8.8 million that this can bring into the state on an annual basis and the 1,800 jobs that this can create, that's a great thing economically for the state. It's going to have regional impact because it's going to appeal not only to the region, but it's going to bring people in from out of state. As many entertainment types of things that we can bring into the state, the more tourism that's going to bring into the state.
Well, Linda, if listeners want to learn more, where do they go?
GlendaleRiverwalk.com is our website for the Riverwalk. Great description of what's going to be going on in the project. Really exciting times right now for Glendale.
Well, to learn more, certainly go to GlendaleRiverwalk.com. And when we come back, we'll talk with Douglas County Planner Terrence Quinn about the plans for the Colorado Sports and Prehistoric Park. Stay with us.